The Allosaurus is a genus of large theropod dinosaurs that lived during the Jurassic epoch about 155 to 145 million years ago. It was a massive bipedal dinosaur, which means it walked on its two hind legs and had short arms. It's one of the best known dinosaurs of all time due to the abundance of fossil remains. As one of the largest carnivores that lived during its time, equipped with rows of large and sharp teeth, Allosaurus was an apex predator feeding on large herbivores. The name Allosaurus means different lizard, alluding to the unique concave vertebrae of these dinosaurs, which were different from that of any other dinosaur found before that time. Allosaurus belonged to a group of dinosaurs known as Carnosauria. Members of this group are among the largest predatory dinosaurs to have ever lived. Aside from Allosaurus fragilis, it's unclear how many other Allosaurus species existed. Up to 8 different species have been proposed in the last 30 years. Only a handful of species is considered valid at any one time, though just which species are valid is still debated. In any case, Allosaurus was a massive carnivore. The largest specimens may have rivaled T.rex in size, growing up to 39 to 43 feet, 12 to 13 meters long, and 15 to 16 feet, 4.5 to 5 meters tall, weighing up to 2 tons. Estimating the lifespan of any given dinosaur is always a tricky matter, but based on the voluminous fossil evidence, paleontologists believe Allosaurus attained its full adult size by the age of 15 or so, at which point it was no longer vulnerable to predation by other large theropods or hungry Allosaurus adults. Barring disease, starvation, or wounds inflicted by angry stegosaurs, these dinosaurs may have been capable of living and hunting for another 10 or 15 years. Allosaurus had a short neck and a narrow, elongated skull, which was disproportionately large, similar to those of other big carnivorous theropods. But unlike other theropods, it had a pair of small horns above its eyes, which were extensions of the lacrimal bones in the skull. It also had ridges that ran along the top of the nasal bones to the horns. Their jaws had 14 to 17 teeth on both top and bottom, which were each as sharp as a steak knife. The teeth were shed easily during feeding and were continually replaced. Scientists have stated they used their skulls similar to swinging a sword. With an open mouth, they swung violently from side to side to make sure its teeth were causing maximum damage to its prey. This is because Allosaurus had a bite that was weaker than modern-day predators such as lions and crocodiles, so it needed to attack and kill its prey differently. The Allosaurus teeth measured up to 4 inches. The teeth grew shorter and curved towards the back of the dinosaur's mouth for an enhanced savage bite. Its vision was probably better than other dinosaurs as its eyes were in front of its head, meaning it was likely to be good at working out distance and time. Good vision was counterbalanced with poor hearing. Allosaurus had crocodile-like ears and only able to hear low-frequency sounds. However, Allosaurus' sense of smell was well developed, which allowed it to be able to smell its prey from a distance. Allosaurus would have reached speeds of up to 21 miles per hour, 34 kilometers an hour. This was faster than other dinosaurs of its time, including the sauropods and stegosaurs it hunted. The discovery of a juvenile specimen with a nearly complete hind limb shows that the legs were relatively longer in juveniles, and the lower segments of the leg, shin and foot, were relatively longer than the thigh. These differences suggest that younger Allosaurus were faster and had different hunting strategies than adults, perhaps chasing small prey as juveniles, then becoming ambush hunters of large prey upon adulthood. Also, fossilized droppings have been found and were 1.52 meters, 5 feet in length, and 10.2 centimeters, 4 inches thick. That is an enormous amount of dung. The Allosaurus tail was not just an accessory, it was a finely tuned instrument that provided balance and stability. This tail allowed the Allosaurus to make rapid turns and adjustments while in full sprint, turning what could be a clumsy run into a graceful and lethal pursuit. This is why researchers believe Allosaurus wouldn't have only scavenged, it would have hunted too. However, its bite would have been remarkably weak for a dinosaur this size, which doesn't hint at only hunting. A bone-reading quarry near the Utah-Colorado border contains fossils of animals that lived 150 million years ago. These were examined carefully for evidence of feeding behavior, and 29% of them were found to have bite marks. Evidence of cannibalism was found at the site. Many of the bite marks were made by sharp, serrated teeth, suggesting that Allosaurus, the most common theropod at the quarry, was the perpetrator. Intriguingly, many of these bite marks were found on fossils of Allosaurus, meaning this is the first evidence of Allosaurus cannibalism in the fossil record. Allosaurus feasted mostly on large herbivore dinosaurs, but researchers have unearthed direct evidences of epic battles between Allosaurus and Stegosaurus. Paleontologists have found an Allosaurus tail vertebra with a puncture wound that matches the shape of a Stegosaurus tail spike, and a Stegosaurus neck bone bearing a U-shaped bite mark that corresponds to the shape of Allosaurus jaws. The Allosaurus could kill healthy medium-sized sauropods or large sauropods such as Apatosaurus that were sick or injured for food. It was an aggressive and fierce predator, as noted by the tooth marks discovered by researchers on the vertebrae of an Apatosaurus. This and several other fossil evidence points to an active predatory lifestyle for this dinosaur. According to biomechanical analysis, the skull was very strong but had a relatively small bite force. By using jaw muscles only, it could produce a bite force of 805 to 8,724 newtons, but the skull could withstand nearly 55,500 newtons of vertical force against the tooth row. It is suggested that Allosaurus used its skull like a machete against prey, attacking open-mouthed, slashing flesh with its teeth and tearing it away without splintering bones, unlike Tyrannosaurus, which is thought to have been capable of damaging bones. They also suggested that the architecture of the skull could have permitted the use of different strategies against different prey. The skull was light enough to allow attacks on smaller and more agile ornithopods, but strong enough for high-impact ambush attacks against larger prey like stegosaurids and sauropods. Another possibility for handling large prey is that theropods like Allosaurus were flesh grazers, which could take bites of flesh out of living sauropods that were sufficient to sustain the predator, so it would not have needed to expend the effort to kill the prey outright. This strategy would also potentially have allowed the prey to recover and be fed upon in a similar way later on. Allosaurus thrived during the late Jurassic epoch about 155 to 145 million years ago. Fossils of this dinosaur are quite abundant in North America's Morrison Formation. In fact, fossils of this dinosaur account for 70 to 75% of theropod specimens found in this formation. Scientists have interpreted the nature of this habitat as semi-arid floodplains with distinct wet and dry seasons. Gallery forests of gigantic ferns and other types of trees were present too. However, because of the enormous size of this dinosaur, these creatures likely spent the majority of their lives in open floodplains, only venturing into more heavily wooded areas on occasion. This is due to the fact that the forest would have been more difficult for them to navigate. During the time of the Allosaurus, the supercontinent Pangaea was breaking apart. Imagine a colossal puzzle slowly coming undone. This was a world in a transition, where the very ground beneath the feet of the Allosaurus was shifting and changing. These tectonic movements gave birth to new ecosystems and climates, shaping the world into something both familiar and alien. Allosaurus had 9 vertebrae in the neck, 14 in the back, and 5 in the sacrum supporting the hips. The number of tail vertebrae is unknown and varied with individual size. James Madsen estimated about 50, while Gregory Scott Paul considered that to be too many and suggested 45 or less. There were hollow spaces in the neck and anterior back vertebrae. Such spaces, which are also found in modern theropods, are interpreted as having held air sacs used in respiration. The ribcage was broad, giving it a barrel chest, especially in comparison to less derived theropods like Ceratosaurus. Allosaurus had gastralia, belly ribs, but these are not common findings and they may have ossified poorly. The forelimbs of Allosaurus were short in comparison to the hind limbs, only about 35% the length of the hind limbs in adults, and had 3 fingers per hand tipped with large, strongly curved and pointed claws. The arms were powerful and the forearm was somewhat shorter than the upper arm. The legs were not as long or suited for speed as those of Tyrannosaurids, and the claws of the toes were less developed and more hoof-like than those of earlier theropods. Each foot had 3 weight-bearing toes and an inner declaw, which Mattson suggested could have been used for grasping in juveniles. It has been speculated since 1970s that Allosaurus preyed on sauropods and other large dinosaurs by hunting in groups. Robert Thomas Bakker has extended social behavior to parental care and has interpreted shed Allosaurus teeth and chewed bones of large prey animals as evidence that adult Allosaurus brought food to layers for their young to eat until they were grown. However, there is actually little evidence of gregarious behavior in theropods, and social interactions with members of the same species would have included antagonistic encounters, as shown by injuries to gastralia and bite wounds to skulls. Such head biting may have been a way to establish dominance in a pack or to settle territorial disputes. Although Allosaurus may have hunted in packs, it has been argued that Allosaurus and other theropods had largely aggressive interactions instead of cooperating interactions with other members of their own species. Cooperative hunting of prey much larger than individual predator, as is commonly inferred for theropod dinosaurs, is rare among vertebrates in general, and modern diapsid carnivores, including lizards, crocodiles, and birds, rarely cooperate to hunt in such a way. Instead, they are typically territorial and will kill and cannibalize intruders of the same species, and will also do the same to smaller individuals. According to this interpretation, the accumulation of remains of multiple Allosaurus individuals at the same site, for example in the Cleveland Lloyd Quarry, are not due to pack hunting, but to the fact that Allosaurus individuals were drawn together to feed on other disabled or dead Allosaurus and were sometimes killed in the process. Allosaurus coexisted with fellow large theropods, Ceratosaurus and Torvosaurus, in both the United States and Portugal. The three appear to have had different ecological niches based on anatomy and the location of fossils. Ceratosaurus and Torvosaurus may have preferred to be active around waterways and had lower, thinner bodies that would have given them an advantage in forest and underbrush terrains, whereas Allosaurus was more compact with longer legs, faster but less maneuverable, and seems to have preferred dry floodplains.